Karlan, student leader who just spoke at the Republican Jewish Coalition Convention. Great to have you, Jennifer.
Great to be here.
Jennifer, in your generation, in your age group, what we're finding is less and less support for Israel. What has your experience been so far?
So my experience has actually been one of understanding and sort of me developing my own sort of relationship to Israel, because I've noticed that lots of Jewish teens, especially having attended public school myself in high school, don't feel this connection to Israel. And if anything, even if they're Jewish, they often are much more critical, because the only major news positions that we see are really critical of Israel, oftentimes borderlining on anti-Semitic lies. And so I've been fortunate to attend a Zionist youth group called Club Z, in which we learn about the history of Israel, what it means for us as Jews. And so oftentimes we don't recognize that, we think that these are policies that are critical of the Israeli government, when in fact they're critiquing us as Jews and the Jewish people. So we have to understand that we should be proud of who we are. We should be proud of being Jews and proud of being a people. We are the people of Israel after all. So we should take pride in it and be able to understand that this is a part of who we are.
I think that was very beautifully articulated.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about Club Z. I don't know if everyone in our audience is familiar. What is Club Z?
Club Z is a national Zionist youth movement, and it's primarily an educational organization for teenagers from 8th grade to 12th. So basically high school and 8th grade. And in it, it's sort of like a Sunday school, except that you go in depth into understanding and analyzing Israeli history, the history of the Jewish people, and the history of anti-Semitism, and how that all ties into who we are as Jewish people today, and having pride and strength in who we are as Jews and as people of and from indigenous to Israel.
You know, I'll tell you something. The recent conflict between Israel and Hamas in May this year, what we saw was at the same time that Hamas rained down 4,000 rockets on the Israeli civilians and population centers, and while Israel was taking defensive measures to really protect herself and her citizens, at the same time, we saw what many are calling a TikTok intifada, which was Israel in essence had to fight two wars, the military battle against Hamas and the public relations battle on social media. I have a son about your age, and what he told me was that on Instagram, on Snapchat, on Twitter, on all these platforms, he saw a tremendous amount of hate being leveled against Israel, and including the Jewish people. What did you find during May, and what do you think the Jewish community needs to do in response?
Great question. So I personally, being a teenager, I have witnessed and seen a lot of these events as anti-Israel and honestly blatant anti-Semitism on social media through Instagram, TikTok, etc. And I've noticed that oftentimes Jewish teens will feel, if they see something that's anti-Israel, they'll feel on an intrinsic level this is wrong somehow, but they won't have the information to back it up. So I think that the first and foremost, we need to have a better understanding of who we are. And that comes with education, to understand, this is who you are, this is what this comes from. And so a lot of this is anti-Semitism packaged in a new form. So if we understand that, then we can, more confidently stand up against the sort of hate we see.
So Jennifer, you grew up in the public school system. Where do you think the average Jewish American teenager and child, where do you think they should be learning this information about Israel and their Jewish heritage?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up and went to Jewish day schools till 8th grade and went to the public school system in high school. But I do think that if you are only in the public school system, a lot of your Jewish education comes from either family or maybe Sunday school or BBYO, but I think that's not enough, because a lot of times, you need to have a greater understanding of Israel and your history as Jewish people. And of course, family is great, but it can't always provide that sort of general context. And so we need to understand these general historical trends in order to truly understand what's going on, what these attacks are. And I think places like Club Z and other sort of groups and movements where you sort of learn that history are really beneficial to understanding who we are and the conflict a lot better.
And if you had $1 million to spend to try to help American Jewish and even non-Jewish teens defend Israel at a moment like the Gaza conflict, how would you spend that money?
That is a great question. I think I would have to say somehow invest it in the public school system. I know that's sort of a long shot, but somehow to get into the curriculum a little bit more about the history of Israel and the Jewish people and how that's sort of one and the same, and understanding even the history and the trends of anti-Semitism, because that's often something that's overlooked. It's not often understood as part of the Israel situation. So I think if other if teens in general, both Jewish and not Jewish, understood this sort of greater historical trend, then they could be able to be more aware of anti-Semitism in terms of Israel hatred as we see it today.
So you'd like to see the public school system do a better job of teaching?
Yeah, I think education is really what it comes down to.
And I want to stay on social media for just another minute, because I can tell you, the people my age group, we are all grappling with this issue and trying to figure out how do we empower your age group. So again, in terms of the fight that's going on social media, at a moment when, let's say, a Bella and Gigi Hadid with over 100 million followers on Instagram, when they get on Instagram during the May Gaza conflict and they say, you know, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, in essence calling for genocide against the Jewish people, and influencing over 100 million people potentially around the world. What do you think the Jewish community could do to help you guys who are on the front lines of social media?
Wow, great question. I think this question seems so tough at first glance, but I honestly think it's simple. And I think that we as an American Jewish community need to better understand that the Israeli situation is obviously complex, but at the end of the day, the reason that they're targeting this so much, the reason that we see so much hate is because it's not about something, you know, abstract and political and, you know, it's about us. And so if we understand and we really get to the bottom of it and understand that, hey, you know, people who, you know, attack Israel, you know, day in and day out, they're not doing it because of politics. They're doing it because of who we are as Jews, as the people of Israel. That's all one and the same. So I think that if we understand the sort of mentality that people who dislike and hate Jews in Israel have, then we can better understand that, hey, that post by Gigi or Bella Hadid, that's not, you know, political activism. That's sort of a coded version of anti-Semitism. And if we understand that, then we can better be skilled to sort of brush away comments that we know are either invalid, incorrect, or anti-Semitic.
Okay, and so I'm going to stay with this topic with you for just another moment longer. Do you think that on social media, if there were more resources given to people in your age group, so let's say memes and messages that were already crafted and things that were graphically beautiful, do you think if all of that was given to you guys that you would be able better to fight this war that's going on against Israel and against the Jewish people?
That's a great question. I think on one hand, yes, I think that we need that information, we need that education, but I think we have to zoom out a little bit and understand that at the end of the day, it all comes down to knowing who you are. It comes down to your identity and your identity of your people. So the reason that we don't put out this information about Jewish history, about Israelis until we're attacked is because our goal is not to put out a political agenda. Our goal is to live our lives as Jews, and their goal is to sort of invalidate and delegitimize our existence. So we're only doing it as a response. So I think if we know that, of course, have the information, have the history, that's important. But if we know that, hey, the only reason we're doing this is because we're doing it as a response to you trying to delegitimize our history, and then we understand that, hey, they're doing this for a specific reason to hate us, and therefore it's about us. We need to take pride and understand that we are Jews, we are proud to be who we are proud to be part of the people of Israel, and they can say whatever lies or twisted truths they want, but at the end of the day, we need to know that most of these things aren't the truth because they're just trying to delegitimize who we are.
Wow, Jennifer Karlan, incoming student at Harvard College, rising student leader in the Jewish world. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
I will look forward to seeing more from you over the years.
Thank you so much.